Seville is one of the most fun places to visit in Spain. This is our second time here and would gladly come back again. Although most of our time was spent in the Old Town Cathedral section, there's a lot of other areas to visit. Some of them will actually be in other videos because there was just so much to see. Seville is the capital of southern Spain's Andalusia region and the fourth largest city in Spain. With everything else historic about the city, it's also very famous for flamenco, not flamingo, but flamenco dancing. Seville is approximately 2,200 years old. The passage of the various civilizations, instrumental in its growth, has left the city with a distinct personality and a large and well-preserved historical center, which is where most of our time was spent on this trip. The oldest name for Seville may be the Phoenician name Hisbal, and may have had something to do with the god Baal. It's had different names during the Roman rule and especially under the Moorish rule. The original core of the city, in the neighborhood of the present-day street Cuesta del Rosario, again if I'm saying it all correctly, dates to the 8th century BC, when Seville was just an outpost and actually an island in the Guadalquivir River. Existing Roman features can be found in various locations in the city walls. An aqueduct, 3 pillars of a temple, the Patio del Banderas Square, which is near the Seville Cathedral. The walls surrounding the city were originally built during the rule of Julius Caesar, but their current course and their design are actually the results of the Moorish reconstructions. Following the Roman rule, there were the successive conquests of the Roman provinces by the Vandals, the Suebes, the Visigoths during the 5th and 6th century. Then eventually the Moors, and then again the Christians. The Seville harbor is actually located about 50 miles from the Atlantic Ocean by the river, but it's the only river port in Spain. And because of this, especially during the Middle Ages, there were a lot of fortifications built along the river. You can actually take a little river tour down there, which we didn't do this time, but we did the first time. It's fairly interesting and has a lot of the bridges that were built during the Reconquista era. But because of the fact that they had all these fortifications up and down the river, it was a great place for all of the ships to come in when they had started bringing in a lot of goods from the Spanish Americas. It was great to have them go into this river and be protected on the way up there. And then Seville became the center that everybody had to come to if they wanted to get the Spanish American goods. So that caused Seville to become a major economic powerhouse. This monopoly as the port that could take all of the goods from the Spanish Americas was broken in the 16th century when the king gave the port of Cadiz its okay to be authorized as another trade port. And since it was closer to the water, it sort of took over and Seville began to decline as an important port. Seville went through the same social history as the rest of Spain. Roman ruled, then the conquests by the Vandals, the Suebes, the Visigoths during the 5th and 6th century. Christians, Jewish, Moorish, Christian again. The decree of all Jews having to convert, leave, or be executed. Then the same for the Muslims. But also, as with the much of Spain, all these 3 cultures lived side by side and worked together for hundreds of years. And the results can be seen in the buildings, in the neighborhoods, and especially in the food. After 1391, during the Jewish persecution, all the synagogues in Seville were converted to churches. The Jewish quarters, lands, and shops were appropriated by the church. Many Jews were killed during this persecution unless they converted or left. The first tribunal of the Spanish Inquisition was instituted in Seville in 1478. At first, the activity of the Inquisition was just limited to the Diocese of Seville and Cordova, but the first ritual public penance of condemned heretics and apostolates actually took place in Seville in February of 1481 when 6 people were burned alive. The Great Plague of Seville in 1649 reduced the population by almost half, and it really wouldn't recover until early in the 19th century. In 2012, a study by experts concluded that the total number of operas that are written are set in Seville are 153. Many people are more familiar with Figaro, and then The Barber of Seville. Seville fell very quickly at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War in 1936. A general carried out a coup within the city limits and quickly captured the city center. The radio station in Seville opposed the uprising and was calling for the peasants to come into the city for arms, and then tried to set up some type of barricades within the city to fight the battle. But the general then took over the radio station and began to broadcast all the propaganda on behalf of the revolutionary forces. But after the initial takeover of the city, resistance still continued among the residents of the working class neighborhoods. So for some time, there were a series of reprisals in the city. In 2004, this particular place called the Petropal Parasol, again if I'm saying it correctly, but it's commonly known as Las Sedas, the mushrooms, due to the appearance of the structure. It was built over a pretty much dead parking lot area in between the old city and the new city. It is said to be the largest timber-framed structure in the world. Although there's plenty of stuff to eat, some of the stuff looks like it could eat you. This guy was actually playing one of our band's tunes in his shop. I'm not sure what these kids were doing during the festival, but it looks like they're playing dice. There really isn't enough that can be said about Seville, Spain. The most I can say is if you get a chance to come here, it is definitely worth the visit.